I'm Susie Hess.
And I'm Yehuda Price. This is Our Stories Matter. Martín Leyva is the program coordinator for Project Rebound at California State University, San Marcos. Leyva is a formerly incarcerated scholar and now a doctoral student at the University of California, San Diego in education. He currently holds a MA in sociology, a BA in psychology, and a certificate in alcohol and drug studies. He institutionalized the Transitions program at 3 community colleges, offering therapeutic and educational opportunities for formerly incarcerated and system-impacted students. As a lecturer in sociology, criminology, and justice studies, he believes in an action-based education, teaches in a reciprocal model, which is I'm the teacher and a student. The student in my class is also a student, but more importantly, a teacher as well. And he believes that the greatest education one has is the personal experience they bring to the classroom.
Awesome. Welcome, Martín. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much for the invite. Definitely looking forward to this.
Yes. We thought that we would start off with just the beginning of why does education matter, especially for folks who are currently incarcerated, formerly incarcerated. Why does it matter?
Why does education matter? I think for me, I think one of the most important things about education is that if it's a good critical education, which I tend to teach, education just isn't books, and it isn't just about preparing for tests and getting a degree. Education to me, it's learning, and I'll speak a lot about this today, is learning about systems in which we come from, especially formerly incarcerated people in recovery, right? There's systems in play, and education, once we learn that, we can learn about these systems, and then we become change agents, right? And then education too, I think one of the most important parts for me is education as a healer, right? When we talk about I remember one of the first classes I ever took when I was doing my drug and alcohol studies certificate is about family dynamics. And instead of just learning, okay, these are the family roles, I actually placed my family within that learning and began to see a structure that most of my family never even recognized. And as soon as I recognized it, it began to allow me to heal, right? And as soon as I started to heal, and the healing process is ongoing, and it all stems from education. And I'm able to teach that out, right? And then lastly, I would say that education gives somebody some self-esteem and some self-worth, and it kind of begins to erase some insecurities we have. And with that self-esteem and that self-worth, when it builds up, I mean, sometimes I think that right there is a beautiful marker in itself, right? I mean, a lot of times we work with people whose self-worth isn't very high, their self-esteem is low. But once we get in the classroom, you start learning about yourself, even you get like an A or a B, that's like a booster, right? Education does all that stuff to people, and I think that's very important. Education is very important to me. It matters a lot, for sure.
I like how you articulated that, and it brings to mind, that trite saying, they say knowledge is power. But I mean, for people who are, especially people who are formerly incarcerated or are marginalized, and access to power is that knowledge, is that education. And it's that power also leads to more power through liberation. As soon as you recognize these systems, as you mentioned, you're able to kind of heal yourself and hopefully liberate yourself and then bring others along. So I definitely hear what you're saying. And I'm definitely intrigued about more what you have to say. I was wondering, how is this pandemic causing you to radically imagine in ways that you have not before?
I think the pandemic, so I'm a very critical sociologist. I do critical criminology. I'm very critical in all my work. At least I try to be. And what I learn and what I teach. The pandemic itself, for one, being formerly incarcerated, when the pandemic first hit, I hit this kind of like paranoia button. And I think a lot of formerly incarcerated students, especially those who spent a lot of time in SHU programs, solitary confinement, administrative segregation, like all of a sudden we felt confined back to our homes. And it was interesting going inward with that and saying, during this pandemic, how free am I really, right? But then learning that, I'm not incarcerated. The pandemic itself, a lot of the students I work with at Project Rebound, they did really well. They're doing really well during the pandemic because we're so used to spending time by ourselves, right? We're so used to spending time on our own. And I think the pandemic, made me appreciate my freedom even more, because at one point thinking I was still locked up, like I'm confined back to my house. It's super interesting how how can I put this? I don't know. It just made me feel like if I survived jail and prison, and those conditions, right? And if we know prisons, they're not the most sanitary places in the world. I realized like this is nothing, or not nothing, but this is something that I got in control of this. I can manage this. The one thing that the pandemic has done to a lot of people, including myself, kind of my mental health was challenged again, right? Seeing the destruction of the pandemic, people that were harmed in and around my community, my students. And it just, it really did impact the mental health part, but realizing, okay, like, here we are going to challenge my mental health. I'm going to try to manage these emotions and feelings and give back to the greater good, see what I can do for my community. Systemically, though, and here's where I'm going to get really harsh on the pandemic, is that pre-COVID, I saw the system and the achievement gaps in education. Students falling behind, students not having technology, students not having Wi-Fi at their houses, not having, what they needed to actually do well. As soon as the pandemic hit, and I'm talking about a lot of students, not just at the university, the colleges, but the K through 12. It was interesting to me to see a system that once blamed people for not doing well because they didn't have resources. All of a sudden, the system's like, oh, we have resources for you. Students were given computers, students were given Wi-Fi and hotspots, computers, or students or teachers were trying to find this other way, and they were really worried about the achievement gap. Like, why all of a sudden can you say, oh, we have all these resources when before you said we didn't have resources for you? It's like the resources are there. They've always been there, and they've always known this. It's too bad we needed a pandemic for us to checkmate the system like that, right? The pandemic, I think, really kind of pulled out even, some people would say I'm more of a radical thinker, but it is like, you don't tell me you don't have resources for the people when the pandemic actually showed you do have resources for the people.
That's right.
Like we're going to lose a lot of students, and the care wasn't about losing a lot of students. It was about losing the capital that those students bring. You know what I mean? And so, teaching online to my students and bringing this to know, so, any resource you need, the university has. Working with K through 12 students, or mainly high school students, saying, you know what, you need resources. The school has you. Once they said they didn't have what you needed to be successful, that was a lie. And that's too bad, right? So the pandemic's actually taught us a lot. It's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot about, it can't allow the system to ever say that we don't have something to provide for you, when that's a lie. You do. You have the financial backing to get all students a computer or some type of remote learning access. You just didn't want to provide it before. Yeah. I don't know if I've answered your question with that. I think the pandemic is a huge topic on its own. Right. But, it's taught us that, unfortunately, I don't like being home. I like being on campus. I like being around students. I like being around people. There's a different energy, and it's hard to bring that energy into the classroom via Zoom or, student services and Project Rebound. But we find a way, the system is just not allowing it. But pandemics, it's interesting how the schools actually said, we're going to put our best foot forward. You should have done that a long time ago. We'd have better success rates than we do, so.
Yes, 100%. And you know what I think about you too, because I can imagine your Zoom classes are super engaging because you're super real. For the listeners, so I met Martín because you were a guest speaker for Unchained Scholars, and Yehuda is the former chair of Unchained Scholars. Mm. And I just remember you were super real. You F-bombed when it was needed. And you even commented saying, I'm not going to sort of become a Eurocentric professor. I am who I am. And I feel like your lived experience is probably, yes, it's awesome to be educated. It's awesome to have the letters because then we can be employed, we could sustain, there's so much. And I do feel that you bring so much with your lived experience. So my guess is that your Zoom meetings, your Zoom classes are probably super engaging because you bring your lived experience with the academic piece. And it's not through a Eurocentric lens, which is usually common in universities and schools. So I'm wondering, I know bits and pieces of your story, but I'm wondering, what is your why? Your why for all of the work you're doing in education and Project Rebound. And, you're an incredible teacher. And I know you see yourself as a learner as well. So what was your why for sort of where you went?
There's a lot of reasons as to my why, and I'll start just, and I'll keep this pretty basic because it's pretty simple, right? I was a high school push out in 9th grade. I have a 9th grade education prior to getting my high school diploma while I was in prison. And I always liked school, but I was always reprimanded at school, right? I was always like, I have ADD, I have ADHD. I didn't know that until my mid-30s. You know what I mean? I didn't get tested till my mid-30s when I was out of prison the last time. In 2008, I got tested. And when I got tested, it made sense. Everything made sense to me when they said, you have ADD and ADHD, and this is what that looks like. And I remember feeling like I wanted to cry when I heard that, because my entire K through ninth grade education made sense to me. Yeah. Why I couldn't sit still, why I couldn't understand, why I have dyscalculia, I have a learning disability with math. And it all made sense to me. And what happened to me then is still happening to students now. Schools saying they don't have resources to get students tested. That's BS. All students should be tested for everything, right? And my why was like, they didn't care about me in school. You know, I wasn't the top 5% of their school. So when I went missing in ninth grade, nobody came looking for me. And I don't want students to go through that, you know. Upwards of, different research, but upwards of 75 to 80% of people in prison have learning disabilities.
Wait, what percentage?
75 to 80 is from the highest research I found. I found some as low as 65. So let's just say anywhere between 65 and 80% of people in prison have a learning disability. You know what I'm saying? And there's something systemic about that. I was born in 1972 and Richard Nixon was saying, we're declaring war on drugs. So in my birth, there's already war on drugs. Technically, there's a war on the poor, right? Because there's more drugs available now. Right? Gang injunctions, all these things, all these laws and policies that I began to learn about, I began to say, like, these are impacting the people that I got to see, the intersectional world I got to see in prison, right? How they treated gay and trans folks in prison, how they treated Black folks in prison, and poor whites and Chicanos and natives and all these people I saw, elders, made so much sense to me in education. And my why became, I need to, even if it's a very small piece, do something to change the system. And education allowed me to enter the rooms that I never once thought I'd enter. I'm going to sit down with the mayor. I'm going to sit down with the city councilor. I'm going to meet the chief of police, even though I don't trust them. You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm coming in speaking on, yes, my own experience, but I'm also bringing in data. Here's some research for you. It's not like I'm making this up. And so my why was the fact that little Martín, a little 6, 7, 8-year-old Martín really wanted to be in school, but didn't know how to be in school. You know what I mean? And by ninth grade, when I'm gone out of school and I realized, maybe I'm supposed to follow the footsteps of my uncles and my cousins and end up in jail and prison. I mean, that's just the way it is, right? And that's not the way it is. And so that's my why, is to completely change our academic system, our systemic issues of inequality, right? Because inequality brings all these issues, family dynamics, and, try and do more community organized, community education, right? Paulo Freire's classic work, push that stuff forward. So my why is really big. It starts with me though, right? Can't create the change you want if you don't change yourself first. So that's where, all the education taught me, change me, and then let people use me as a mirror. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Listening to you, you give me an example of what I'm trying to head to. You're formerly incarcerated, and now, you're an educator, and now you're impacting so many people. And you're doing it in a way that people in academia can't do because they don't have that lived experience. They don't have that level of insight that's able to connect with people who are also coming from our particular backgrounds. And knowing that you have all this education now at your fingertips, and you're also to impart that to other people from similar backgrounds. I'm wondering specifically to you, how has education and being an educator been healing for you?
Oh my God. You got 2 hours? 3 hours? You got 4 hours? Once again, education, I didn't realize what I was going to get when I started going to school. When I started going to school, I knew I wanted to change. I didn't even know what the change looked like. I wanted a job. I didn't even know what the job looked like. I didn't want to go back to prison. That's what I knew. That's what I knew I definitely wanted. The classes I took, I began to listen to the phrases used in the classes. And I began to really embed myself in, when I left prison, one of my elders, he said to me, when you get out, help the people. I didn't know what that meant, but I took it serious. And so everything I was learning, I think my mindset was the right place. I think my heart was in the right place. I think that the fear of going back, and I wasn't actually in fear of going back to prison. It was the fear of disappointing, letting myself down, letting my mom down, letting my kids down. Like I said earlier, everything I was reading, everything I was listening to, everything like family dynamics, the war on drugs, mass incarceration, I didn't even know what that stuff meant before I went to prison or before I went to school. But I read more and more about it. And it was like, so I'm colluding with this system but the system isn't even teaching me how I'm colluding with it, right? And so I need to learn what collusion was, what it is, how I'm doing it. And what I was learning, and I was walking back to my neighborhood, I was learning about mass incarceration, surveillance, and all these things. And as I walk back to my neighborhood, I see it. Cameras everywhere. You know, I stood on my block one time on the west side of Santa Barbara, and I just, little social experiment. Stood on the corner, one of the little hot zones we have. Every 6 minutes, a cop drove by.
Wow.
That's interesting. You know what I mean? Like that, if I went by the park where the gang members kick it, every 4 to 5 minutes, a cop was driving by. Ain't nobody doing nothing wrong, but they're driving by, right? Nobody called the cops, but they're driving by. And I began to really embed myself in this. And I began to say, look at my life through, it's like from my earliest memory of being in the neighborhood, my earliest memory of just being a kid and watching my uncles and other people get arrested. And if I felt an immense like pain in my heart, like this is real shit. You know, I got to see the drug deals going down, the same stuff, everything I was looking at. I said, this neighborhood doesn't realize it's hurt. But in order to help heal the neighborhood, I better really know how to understand this and really allow it like just to heal. So doing spiritual work, doing meditation, doing mindfulness, doing, a lot of self-care. Became very selfish for a little bit, but I needed this selfishness in order to heal myself, right? Because if I wanted to heal others or help others see, I have to be able to explain to them what I'm seeing, how I'm seeing it, not only how I'm seeing it, but what it's making me feel, right? Knowing something is fine. Doing something about it is a whole different story.
Yeah.
Right. And so, like I said earlier, healing starts from inside. And then I think once we hit this place, it begins to like glow outwards and other people are attracted to it, right? If Maslow's real at all, right? And his little pyramid, the top of his pyramid is self-actualization. I never want to get there. You know what I mean? I always want to be working towards the top of his pyramid. I want to be able to bring other people with, you know what I'm saying? Because I think it's healing is a lifelong journey, especially when there's so much trauma. Even trauma that is historical, even before I was born, there's trauma in my life. And we'll probably get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I don't know if I answered that question. But you know what I mean? Like that's a really deep question because, it's just a deep question. I hope I got to it. But
oh my God, are you kidding? You did and more. And it's funny that you said that because a colleague sent me an article about Maslow got it wrong yesterday.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I'll send it to you afterwards, but it was really interesting because it's basically the Eurocentric perspective that self-actualization is at the top. And the First Nations perspective is cultural I can't even say that word. Cultural fluidity, I'm going to say, because I can't pronounce the other word. That's at the top. And it's interesting because then it was aesthetic needs for Eurocentric, and for First Nations, it's community actualization.
And we're such community-based people, right? To think that self-actualization, that means you're up there by yourself and you made it. That's gotta be fucking boring.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I want to be able to be at a place where I know that I'm good and my community's good, my family's good, the people around me understand what's going on. We know about something's wrong, that we can heal and we can help each other, that nobody's pushing each other out. This is the model of restorative justice, right?
Yep.
Right. Reintegration, that nobody's, if somebody's hurt, somebody's healed, right? If the community is hurt, then the community's got to heal, right? If one person's out, everybody's out. We all got to be together. And community work, by far, it's not easy at all. It's very difficult stuff because we all come from different angles and feel different things. And I think the ill part is the communication is we aren't taught how to communicate this.
Yeah.
I mean, I was taught how to communicate my feelings with fists. Yeah. You know what I mean? With violence. I can't even imagine myself there anymore, ever. Do you know what I mean? Because let's talk, let's hug, let's get to this place of how I hurt you or how you hurt me. But more importantly, how can I heal you? How can you heal me? Wow. You know what I mean? Like I want to communicate this with words and energy, not violence or microaggressions or passive aggressive methods the way we're taught to be, right? So I think that's a community space.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And you said so many important things, and I keep hoping I can remember everything. But one, is your bravery, right? As a male, as a Latino male, is that how you identify?
I identify as Chicano.
Chicano male. Mm-hmm. And then I think of Yehuda as a Black male, right? African-American male. And then I think about dismantling patriarchy. I mean, my conversations with Yehuda are, my guess is that probably different than maybe back in the day. And I don't know many males out here that could say, let's hug, let's provide each other like space for healing. I mean, what you just said, Martín, is really dismantling, patriarchy and toxic masculinity, which obviously is a connection to mass incarceration.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one thing that's important is that as I've healed more and more, it's easier for me to say, I love you. It's easier for me to say, I care about you and I see you, and not be fake about it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's it's super important, because I have my mentors or my mentees, I like working with young men, and they find it so foreign when I say, okay, you have a good day, contact me later. I give them a little handshake, a hug, and I say, I love you. And they're like, take a step back, like, what? You know what I mean? And it's like, I love you, and I'll tell my class. I just ended my class this past Wednesday, and I give my little spiel about the importance of education, the importance of self-care, the importance of communication, the importance of being your own best friend, right? People always say I'm my own worst enemy, which I think is shit now. I think you should be your own best friend. What would your best friend tell you? And I tell my class, and mind you, a lot of them don't even turn their cameras on, but I read your work. I know a little bit about you, that my last words is like, okay, let me know if you need anything. I love you all.
Oh.
And I didn't feel fake. That's a real statement.
Yes.
And I think that it took a long time for me to, I've been out of prison going on 14, 15 years now. And it took me a long time to get to this place. But I think that ultimately that's who we are in the first place. You know what I mean? Yes. So, yeah, yes. No, expressing those is super important. Super important.
Yes. And I see your mouth about to be open, Yehuda.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, because, I remember what it was, like on a 180 Pelican Bay State prison yard, and that hypermasculinity that one needed to survive. And I can't even, like, if I was to, advise somebody what they need to do when they go into prison, I can't tell them that you shouldn't have a sense of hypermasculinity or something like that, or be detached from your feelings, because that's an actual coping mechanism. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing you're left to do in that particular environment. So I think, touching back on what Martin spoke about earlier, it was like dismantling these certain systems in place, because these maladaptive coping mechanisms are actually adaptive in those particular circumstances, but they're adaptive because they need to be used to adapt to that particular environment. But once a person is trying to reintegrate into, the pro-social community out here, those particular, characteristics that one has utilized to survive now are making it harder for a person to adapt, as a contributing community member. So it's a complicated thing. And but the reason we do it also as well too is trying to address the different traumas that we face while incarcerated, and we're still living with the traumas previously, as I'll cite the stats as well. Almost up to 90% of people incarcerated have experienced some sort of trauma prior incarceration, and then you have incarceration itself. All the trauma one has to contend with as well. So I'm wondering, Martin, what does it mean to address trauma through education?
What does it mean? Well, what I'll say is I know what it means for me. Addressing trauma through education for me is a key factor when I try my best to decolonize my curriculum, my syllabus. And I think addressing trauma is important. It's foreign to students, completely foreign to students. Right? I just taught a class on inequality, right? And I went through the different intersections of inequality, from gender to pay wage inequality to, racism, everywhere you find inequality. Mm-hmm. But to teach, and I'll give you an example, to teach about sexism, yes, there's a system of sexism at play, right? What was it? One in three girls before the age of 18 will be sexually assaulted, right? And if we do like trauma-informed care, which I love trauma-informed care, we teach about a biological response, a feeling, emotion, how to respond to it. All that stuff is beautiful. But when really addressing trauma or addressing these issues in education, I have to teach about the history of sexism. I have to teach about what I call justice-informed care. Everything is involved with a system that is, if we do not do something about it, will just repeat itself, and we see it, right? Racism is a social construct, or race is a social construct, but racism, there's real consequences towards it, right? Sexism, heterosexism, classism, and there's a history behind it. We can't just teach the person impacted by it how to respond to it. We need to teach them how to take action against it so the next person behind them doesn't get impacted by it.
Yes.
And I think that that is just the important thing, that is just not, for me, education isn't just about, okay, this is what's happening in this place right now. This is what's been happening for 200, 300, 400 years. This is what was happening as soon as colonization happened.
Yeah.
Moving forward, here's what I would do about it, but everybody decide what they can do about it, right? And so I think that addressing trauma is paramount. It's paramount, and we got to teach not only about the response of today, but the history and the implications that it's had historically, right? And to say that a lot of times, and I get really, and I'll use this as an example, I get really upset and tired of people using this ideology of rational choice, victim blaming shit, right? People be like, you chose to be, and this happened to me. People are like, you chose to be an alcoholic. You chose to be a drug addict. You chose to go to jail or prison. And for the longest time, I was like, well, I'm here. It's my fault, right? But when I started to heal and learn about the traumas and began to look at my neighborhood as if I chose to be an alcoholic, who chose to put 13 liquor stores and an 8-block radius? You know what I mean? Who chose to flood my neighborhood full of drugs? Who chose to put all these surveillance cameras in a cop in my neighborhood every 5 minutes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I made the rational choice to become this, then the system made a rational choice to flood my neighborhood with liquor stores and drugs and surveillance cameras. And the system chose to not properly educate me or give me the testing that I needed. The system chose to try to erase me from their education system. So you want me to be responsible? I will. But I'm going to hold you accountable too. And that has to do with trying to heal the trauma from the past. Like, I don't want this generation after me to go through the same things. What can I do to address, historical trauma, the implications of what's going on in their neighborhoods and their families? Like, there's, it's so deep. It's so deep. And, I look at my trauma growing up, and then the more I learn about my mom, I realize her trauma was even worse. And I think about my kids, and their trauma is less than mine. And I hope to get to this place where, someday I see great grandbabies or great grandbabies, and that their life always gets better than the generation before them. And that's addressed through education, through community work, through organizing. And once again, it's addressed through role modeling. You know what I mean? It's addressed through being a Chicano educator who is healing. I'll never say that I'm healed. You know what I mean? But I'm always healing. So yeah, it's deep. It's deep for sure.
Oh my God. One, you're deep and such a beautiful human being. I mean, everything you said, and I think I mentioned this on a different podcast. I think I mentioned it on Selena's podcast, who's a teacher in Inglewood. She was talking about research that white kids who are presenting with any type of behavioral issues are sent to the principal's office. White are sent in the afternoon. Black and brown are sent in the morning because the teachers don't have the patience. And then there's all the stereotypes and the racism, and they go immediately. And then we know the school to prison pipeline, depending on the diagnoses that you're going to be given at that moment. So, just the power of what you're saying of systems, and a lot of schools, especially schools of social work, focus on the micro aspect, not the macro. What you need to do. And even I can go off on a whole other thing of like, how can you change your thoughts and behaviors and feelings versus let's talk about the system that is oppressing individuals so they don't have to even start going through all of that. And so I'm wondering for you, everything that you said is, like you said, deep, and it's so huge. What does healing from the United States look like? And now we see it on social media. Obviously, it's been here since the beginning of time. In terms of being a carceral state, a carceral country, we've seen what happened in Katrina. We see what's happening with the health inequities, with COVID. What does that look like?
I wish I had a short answer for this, but it isn't. But the system really does work for certain groups of people. So I'm in the mindset we need to, people were like, oh, we need to just like hit the reset button. But the status quo is even if we set the reset button and those people that are in charge are still there, what's the point of hitting the reset button?
Right.
It's just like people got excited about Obama. I got excited about Obama. I voted illegally for Obama. You don't have to delete that either. You know what I mean? I was only out of prison just a few months when that dude said, I'm going to run for president. I was like, I'm going to vote for you too. And they sent me a form. So I was like, all right, I'm voting for you.
Nice.
Right. But it doesn't matter who's in office if the policies and the laws are the same. You know what I mean? All these places that are getting new police chiefs who are more progressive and want to change. But if the policies that they are in place are the same, it doesn't matter, right? People go about, during the past summer protests over George Floyd, people went as far as to take down the statues. I'm cool. Take down those racist statues. But I could care less because the laws and policies are still in place. Tear down a statue for what? Go ahead. But like you're tearing down a symbol, but the main thing that's really targeted me isn't that statue. It's the laws and policies that are in place. So I'm in the mindset to heal from the United States and colonization and imperialism. I mean, look what's happening in Palestine right now. I'm at the mindset that we need to really start to abolish these systems.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That when they say people of color, when I really think about people of color and we think globally, people of color truly are people of global majority, right? There's only small pockets of white supremacy or white domination, but they're so strong. But, look at what happened in Attica when all people got together. Attica fucked things up. And then they began to separate people by race. That's the prison systems did. They're scared of people power. But I think that people power can really abolish a system and make it work. So to heal from that, right? To heal from the United States is really taking a look at the long history of what is happening. And, I don't know. There's a history of the United States that, put people on reservations. There's a history of Israel that made Palestine and the Gaza Strip so small. Do you know what I mean? And this has happened, in Australia, and where you see like the Aboriginal folks, just their places got smaller. You know what I mean? And it's global. That I think that to heal from the United States is to heal from the long history of deep-seated root racism and sexism, to heal from, dismantle and abolish those laws and policies. And, if we want to live as a nation, then, it needs to be inclusive of everybody.
I have one question that I'm curious about your thoughts. What do you feel? Because I think, obviously, I agree with you in terms of policy. And then I was thinking, okay, so let's say the policies change in law enforcement, but it's the same people, it's the same culture. That makes me worried also. What are your thoughts?
I think we need to be culturally proficient, right? We need to, I think one of the most beautiful parts about us is that we're not the same. You know what I mean? I think one of the most beautiful things about us is that we are different, but I can celebrate you and you can celebrate me, right? I can empower you and you can empower me. We can be different in our music, in our dance, in our culture, in our dress styles, in our histories, and I can still hold your hand and you can still hold my hand. And I'll make sure that when I come up, you're going to come up. You know what I mean? And that if you fall down, I'm going to pick you up, because I hope that if I fall down, you pick me up. And I think that we need to, that's how I teach my class. If I get one student that's failing, I'm going to say, let's just see who we can rally behind, who can help your classmate, your peer, the person you're taking this class with, support them, right? And generally my classes, they tend to get all A's and B's, not because I'm a nice professor, it's because they really do work with each other. Now, if we looked at that as like a microcosm of what's happening in the United States, that's how we should be treating each other. And it includes like anybody in any kind of official office. I mean, do we even need official offices, really? You know what I mean? Do we really need these people, right? When each community kind of treats itself differently, because each community has their own culture. Each community has their own traditions. And why can't we govern our own communities, right? So I don't know. There's a lot to work on.
There is. And, I think it goes back to what you were saying also at the beginning about really thinking who are in the positions of power, who are sitting at these tables, because we need the policies to change. And we also need that culture to be, well, actually, everything just needs to be dismantled. But we really need, the folks who are on it to have buy-in. And that's not going to be the people that are there right now.
Yeah, then that's true. And even if, once again, too, and I say this a lot, talk about that buy-in. You can put a new person in office, but if you don't change the policies that person governs, then really, I mean, everybody's excited about Joe Biden. And it's just like, but the policies that he's going to run, I don't know. You know what I mean? We could dismantle. So
I definitely hear you, Martin, with the policies and systems into place. I do, me being a Jew, I do have to comment on the Israel thing and saying that governments and policies, I don't think there is a government in the world that I can get behind necessarily completely. So I definitely hear you on that. But I also have to give, with the rise in anti-Semitism across the world and Jews being the number one target of religious hate crimes in the world, that the Jews are an indigenous people as well. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about Israel and Palestine, that's just a complex issue of what sort of indigenous rights and how do you balance in that? And that is not to condone any particular government's actions. That is just to provide the context to that. But specific to you, though, I definitely want to hear about how do you see education as community healing? I know we talked about the individual, and I know you touch on a lot of these things because you do. All your answers are just so detailed. But I want to, if you could shine a highlight on the community healing aspect of how you see education as community healing.
So and I love this question because I always challenge my students to have a conversation that we have in class with their family member. You can go have a conversation about what's happening in my class to the community. That's kind of easy. The hard part is actually bringing this education to where the trauma first started. And I always share this example is that the more educated I got, and the more I learned about these systems and the more I healed, it created distance between me and certain family members because they couldn't see that. Do you know what I mean? They thought, he thinks he's smarter than us. He thinks he's better than us. That's not the case. The case is that, education is helping me heal. And so I think that once we begin to share things with our students, I say, go have these conversations with the toughest crowd you're going to have, which is your mom and dad, because they were brought up the way your grandparents were brought up. And there's a historical context to this way of thinking. And when you go to school, get educated, you find a new way of being, go have those conversations and begin to allow your family to see trauma, right? Begin to see what we can do without finger pointing, right? Because I've had students share stories like, I went and I shared this with my mom and we got into a big argument. And it's just like, did you blame her for something? You know what I mean? Don't blame, explain. Share and come from the part of feeling. I learned about the history of X, Y, and Z. And when I learned a lot, I already knew about Indian reservations. My mom was from New Mexico. And when we began to learn just the history of reservations and the alcoholism and the implications of how poor they are, I understood her trauma. When I got to able to have these conversations with my mom, one, she pretty much agreed with me. Oh yeah, life on reservation was tough. Life in the San Juan neighborhood in Albuquerque was really tough. And then we were able to have that conversation about what the stuff she went through. And it just even having those conversations, my mom was able to see things a little differently. Like it's not her fault, right? It wasn't my fault. What happened to me was not my fault. And I think that education becomes the thing that can heal the community. And the community is a living organism, right? You know what I mean? Like the community is living, it's breathing, it's all these folks coming together. And I think that education really can heal that space, especially if there's no dominance. I'm not better than you. You're not better than me. We're equal. And let's just come from this place of, I want to understand you like you want to understand me. And I want to be understood too. You know what I mean? Even in changing, like I've been clean and sober for a long time. And I don't walk into my community talking about, oh, I've got 17 years clean time. No, you know what I mean? Like staying clean is a struggle. Staying clean is a maintenance,
Yeah.
And I'm able to share just about me that when I get to see my homeboys say, yeah, I've got a year now, right? I'm like, yeah, that's what it's about. And I think the education community can't be separate. I think education and community got to be one thing. And I think that the healing will naturally come if everybody's visible, everybody is seen, everybody is cared for, right? That there isn't any, oh, we're over here doing this thing and let them do that stuff. Like, no, they over there are part of us, right? And that we are all living and breathing this together.
Yes.
And I think I think that we heal each other. We heal each other, especially communities that are tight. If I go back to the neighborhood on the west side, people are so divided, but they know each other so well. They grew up with each other. They'd be gossiping about each other. Oh, so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that. Well, if you know them well, assist them, be with them, talk to them, guide them. Don't judge them. Don't prejudge and let alone don't discriminate. I think it's funny when people start gossiping in the neighborhood. I'm like, if you know so much about that person you don't approve, go over there and hold their hand. You know what I mean? Go over there and just say, hey, you need a friend to talk to? I got you.
Yeah.
Education and community can't be separate.
I mean, I think the world would be a different place for sure if we would live that way, live in community and live about caring about the next person. I mean, I know for me, it heightened my sense of community during the COVID time. I've always been, connected to community. This was even 100% more. So I'm wondering for folks who wanted to get involved with Project Rebound, like to support your efforts and or who wanted to attend Project Rebound and, go that way, what would you suggest? What are next steps? Who can they contact? Anything you can share?
Yeah, I think the beauty about Project Rebound is that, for the longest time, it was a one campus thing up at San Francisco State. And over the years, the last 4 or 5 years, it's branched out. We're now in, I believe, 13 of the 23 CSU campuses. And so I think if anybody wanted to get and my first audience for that is for me, formerly incarcerated individuals who want to go to school, right? Reach out to just Google Project Rebound. We're at 13 campuses, email, call, or just get a hold of the coordinator or director, right? And I will, if anybody were to call me and says, hey, I just got out or I've been out for 5 years and I want to go to school, even if they weren't ready to come to the CSU system, I say, you know what, we have a community college who can help you and I will help you navigate the community college, right? Because it isn't just about getting them to Cal State San Marcos or Cal State Fullerton or San Francisco State or Bakersfield or Fresno or all these other places, these CSUs that have. It's about getting them into education. And that means getting you into the community college and assisting you and supporting you to get to the CSU. And I think that I know for a fact, and I can share this with confidence, that any CSU Project Rebound will help anybody, whether they just got out or they've been out for a long time. You know what I mean? And you don't have to go to their school. I've helped people navigate community college and they go to San Diego State. That's fine by me. They don't have to come to my school. I just want to see you go. I think anybody who's formerly incarcerated, just reach out to Project Rebound, Google it, find the nearest CSU that has one, contact them. And for me, if they were to contact my office and they say, I want help, but I don't want to go to school, I said, cool, let's find you a vocation or a trade school. Let's find you a certificate program, or let me just help you with your resume. Yes. You know what I mean? I love education, but education isn't for everybody. Right. And I'll help you even just expunge your record or get all the little things off your record. That way, if you don't want to go to school, at least you got a clean slate of some sort. People think that Project Rebound is about education only. That's what we push. But it's not. It's about, come join our support groups. Come kick it with people who are, we hope we're doing the next best thing in front of us. We feel like we are. Come hang out with us. You know what I mean? Education for me isn't my main goal. My main goal is to help people feel and be successful regardless of what they want to do, right? And if you're somebody who wants to learn about the implications of mass incarceration and reentry, come by. I mean, I take on volunteers and interns all the time. I want to share because we also got to erase the stigma of incarceration, right? The stigma of incarceration holds people back all the time. And I hear it all the time, they're afraid to even say, hey, I've been incarcerated, right? And it's just like, I understand that. I got a group of students who are up at Cal State San Marcos who share with me they've been incarcerated, but have never shared that with a professor or a counselor or anybody else. And I think that's fine, right? But we need to erase this stigma, because incarceration doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? Being incarcerated doesn't mean you're the worst of the worst. Incarceration means you've been locked up before. That's it. That's all that means, right? Yeah, I think the greatest people I ever met were incarcerated, and then also, hey, if you got some money you want to donate, we're cool with that too.
Yes.
For real though, for real.
I wish we didn't have to ask for money or need to raise money, but money helps out students with scholarships and books, and you know what I mean? So I just had to throw that little plug in real quick.
Sure. And we're going to be sending out, once your episode goes live, we're going to be sending out a newsletter with Project Rebound and any other resources you want to email me. We'll put it on our newsletter that goes out to the community. So they'll have all the information on Project Rebound as well. And I am so grateful for your support, and the most amazing human beings, like brilliant, compassionate, attuned in my life have been formerly incarcerated. Hence Yehuda, you, everyone from Unchained Scholars. And that's actually the truth. There's a humbleness. There is that realness that, to be honest, a lot of people who haven't been inside aren't as real and as appreciative of relationships. And so I'm super grateful, Martín, that you were here and you took the time to be here with us. And our last question that Yehuda and I were always interested in what was it like for you to tell your story here today? I know you a little bit, Susie, and Yehuda. I'm getting to know the two of you. Have such a beautiful spirit that even if we're on this little Zoom call, I feel comfortable. And so sharing my story is comfortable. And it's also, I think the only way that I can share my story is if I understand my story. The only way that I'm able to speak on it is that I'm not sharing anything I'm not going to walk away from here feeling like, oh, there's a void there, right? Or I regret that. Like, no, I don't regret this because as Yehuda said in the beginning, I believe that the greatest education people have is their own personal experience. That my personal experience has brought me here today, right? That the only way we've ever met is through the work that I've done on myself and in my community. And I think that work in itself is kind of universal, that the universe brings people together. And so sharing my story and my experience and my words here today, it's like I'm still giving back, and I always want to give back. I never want to, when I learn something, I don't want to hold it to myself. You know what I mean? I want to give it away. And so, I can kind of say there's a confidence that I know at least one person will be touched by something I said here. I also know that somebody might be offended by something I said here. And that's okay, because I think when we get offended, we begin to heal too. Yes.
Why did that offend me? Why did that hurt me? Why am I so bothered by that? Well, that's a explore that in yourself, right? And I think that sharing, even I know my story, and I think that sharing it allows me to continue to heal. And like I said, I never want to stop healing. I'll never fully be healed. And I'm cool with that, I love who I am, and I love who I am, and I love what I'm learning about myself. And to me, that's a gift. You just got to keep giving it away. So I thank you both for this space and being who you are and doing what you do. And, even in distance, we family. So
thank you so much, Martin. I appreciate all that you do. Cal State Fullerton Project Rebound helped me out so much. So I Project Rebound, I know what you do to so many individuals like myself. So I'm in deep appreciation for the work you do. Thank you for giving this inspiration to all of our listeners and coming here into this particular space. And I look forward to having dialogue with you in the future.
Oh, me too. Me too, for sure.
Yes. Thank you so much, Martín. We love who you are. And I can't wait to see you in person someday. I mean, we developed a relationship virtually since the beginning. So I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And thank you so much for sharing your heart.
Thank you. I appreciate you both very much. And we're at the tail end of the pandemic. So one of these days we're going to be in the same space together.
Yes, please.
Breaking bread.
Yes. Stay safe, and we'll be in touch soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
We'd like to thank our listeners, and special thanks to Arts in Action, part of USC Visions and Voices, the Arts and Humanities Initiative, for their generous support. Arts in Action, part of USC Visions and Voices, plants seeds for positive social change by activating intensive art projects between community partners, students, and faculty. Today's episode is written and produced by Susie Hess and Yehuda Price. Today's music is co-written and produced by Yehuda Price, utilizing a contraband cell phone while in prison. Our Stories Matter is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Our Stories Matter, and our website at traumainformedla.org. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.
Life is the life we live. Modern day slavery pursuing cheddar. Life is the life we live. Whips and chains trying to duck the 12th letter.
Mamas tell us be good, obey mass, so don't be like daddy all in the hood, okay, bastard.